Hello, everybody. I'm Howie Hawkins. I was the Green Party and the Socialist Party candidate for president in 2020. And this podcast, Green Socialist Notes, is about continuing to educate and advocate for the eco-socialist program that Angela Walker and I ran on. And today is May Day, or it will be in 2 days. So that's the theme of the podcast today. And we're going to have two labor organizers on to talk about that. But before we bring them on, I just wanted to tell people a little bit about the background to May Day, which people may not know. It started in this country with the general strike in Chicago for an 8-hour workday. And that was on May 1st, 1886. And then at a support demonstration a few days later, May 4th, someone threw a bomb into the crowd as the police were starting to disperse the crowd. And in the ensuing melee, 6 police officers and 4 protesters were killed and hundreds were injured. And so the police, after that, rounded up hundreds of supporters of the strike, convicted a number of them on a, basically unfair trial, and hung 4 of the Haymarket activists, who are now called the Haymarket Martyrs. So a few years later, the Second International of Socialist and Labor Parties called for May Day demonstrations in 1890, the next year, to commemorate the Haymarket Massacre and the martyrs. And that began to become a tradition. But in the US, conservative union officials pushed for a September May Day, separate from the May Day International Workers' Day that was organized by the Socialist movement. And by 1894, President Grover Cleveland signed a law making the September Labor Day a federal holiday. So most countries of the world, the majority of them, celebrate May Day. It's an official holiday. But this country, it's different. And we have a separate one in September. But a lot of us celebrate both days. And I would also note that, May Day is really part of an older tradition of celebrating the coming of spring and all that is good on the green earth. And that's a tradition and, celebrated in different ways in cultures all over the world. And actually, I wrote an article exploring the connections between the red labor and the green environmental traditions of May Day. It's called May Day is Red and Green. And we'll put the link up to that if you want to read it at some point. And let me just say a few words about the state of labor in this country now. Despite the higher profile of union organizing drives in movements like ours at newer companies like Amazon and Starbucks, and the high profile strikes, particularly by teachers' unions in recent years, union organization, the percentage of people in unions, has continued to decline. I mean, today we have the highest approval of unions since 1965, 71%, according to the latest Gallup poll. But we only have 10.1% of workers in unions. And in the private sector, it's only 6% of private workers, which is a lower rate than we have had at any time since the unionization drives of the 1930s. Union organization peaked at 35% of workers in 1954. And by 1965, when we had a similar high approval of unions at over 70%, it had declined to 28.4% of workers. That's 1965. And today it's 10.1% and 6% in the private sector. So for this May Day podcast, we have 2 labor organizers to talk about what we can do about this situation. And one of them is Bill Berry. He's spent 25 years as a union organizer and director of labor studies at the Community College of Baltimore, County-Dundalk. And he's published a series of books on union strategies and organizing. The newest one is called Getting to the First Contract. He also has out this year a 4th edition of his book, I Just Got Elected, Now What? A New Union Officer's Handbook. And he's a member of the Green Party in Maryland. And we also have coming on, she was working on her browser, Natalie Monarrez, who is a organizer, activist, and labor advocate that has worked at Amazon for almost 6 years in New Jersey and New York. And she was a leader in the organizing for the successful vote to recognize the Amazon Labor Union at the Amazon Hub JFK 8 in Staten Island, and acts as an unofficial shop steward there. She's previously worked as a workers' compensation claims examiner, and also she's a stand-up comedian. And she was doing that in Los Angeles and moved east. And she says that has been helpful in organizing. And I think, yeah, humor always helps when things get tense, or, people just need to relax for a minute. So we're still waiting for Natalie. So Bill, why don't you take it away and tell us what we need to be thinking about and doing in the situation we're in now.
Well, I think there are many things that we need to be thinking about. Obviously, organizing is one of them. The structure of the unions is a big thing. And over the past 50, 60 years, we've really created a two-tiered system within the unions. You have the officers who are paid substantially more than the members, and certainly didn't have to worry in most cases about going to work during COVID, and the members. And we call it the servicing model. And the problem is that the servicing model doesn't deal with organizing. And so there has been almost no effort put into organizing. There was a group as of yesterday I saw in the food and commercial workers who is going to go to the convention and notice that their membership is way down, and they represent people in retail stores, and certainly crucial area is the packing house workers out in the Midwest. But that the assets of the union have gone up tremendously while the membership is down. And so they're going to push to have a focus on organizing. They're going to do what the Teamsters and the auto workers have done, is to demand direct election of the officers. Because at this point, the officers of the food and commercial workers are elected every 5 years by a convention, and members have no control over that. And so the officers who've not put resources into organizing, and organizing can be very difficult and expensive. And you'll see unions, for example, the United Electrical Workers, overwhelmed. I just saw a notice that they won an election of 5,500, something like that, graduate students at the University of Minnesota after 4 or 5 attempts. They won an election here for about 3,300 at Johns Hopkins. Not a staff person available for them. And so the huge surge of people who want to be organized, the unions are often not able to accommodate it. I think one of the fantasies that many of the officers do is they do cite those figures that you showed, Howie, that the approval rating has never been higher. And that's like saying, yeah, man, it would be great if I lost 50 pounds. As if you can say that and then just go back to bed or keep eating. It's a huge obstacle. And the companies have made it very, very difficult and dangerous to organize. And I'm sorry that Natalie is not with us yet to talk about all the gritty details of what's going on at the Amazon warehouse in Staten Island. Because if people have not been involved in organizing campaigns, they just don't know the incredible anger and hostility that companies show, both large and small, against a union campaign. And the difficulty is that not only are individuals fired, but there are just constant attempts to have what we call captive audience meetings to tell people, oh, you're going to be much worse if you have a union. A critical issue in the last couple of years since organizing has come back in places like Amazon and Starbucks is getting a contract. And I'm some cases accused of being old-fashioned because I want to see a written agreement that spells out what our rights are, what our pay is, what our protection is against being fired. A number of years ago, I worked with a group who were affiliated with the Industrial Workers of the World, the IWW, organizing a carryout place here called Jimmy John's. And they've said, oh, we don't need a contract. The IWW never had contracts, and we need to go ahead. I don't agree with that. And so the pamphlet that you mentioned, the booklet, is on how to get a first contract. And it's a skill that many officers of unions do not have. They've never done it. They've never organized any new place. And so they don't understand the challenges of getting a contract at a place where people, the employer is going to fight you every step of the way. There's a great book that came out about 20 years ago called Confessions of a Union Buster by a guy named Marty Levitt, who had worked for years breaking unions. And he then had a change of heart briefly and decided he was going to find redemption by exposing all the things he'd done.
You're on which browser are you using?
Okay, so I think maybe Natalie is going to be able to come in, but it's a crucial time for all of us. And if you're not in a union, you have to understand that for decades, unions set policies for all the companies.
No, StreamYard is what you should be using. And Chrome supports it. So I don't know what the problem is.
Fully paid health insurance.
Let me give you another phone number to the tech guy.
How you need to mute yourself, I guess you got to do that. And everybody had pensions. Everybody had vacations and paid holidays and protections at work. We just had Workers' Safety and Health Day yesterday, a commemoration of it. And we are seeing horrible, dangerous working conditions in a lot of areas. I just saw a story this morning about a guy working at a Tyson plant, cut himself and was told, go to the plant doctor, but you can't go to the hospital because you don't have insurance.
Okay, ready? 217.
Is an immigrant worker.
652.
And so the benefits that unions got
5575
would spill over into all workers. And so today we were just talking about the fight for 15, and I said it should be the fight for 30. People should have incomes. One job is not enough. And particularly in the last year, we've seen huge inflation. And so people are talking about organizing, but getting it out and doing it and be willing to do what Natalie has done, which is take the risk and take the abuse and take the hostility from her boss, is essential. And one of the stories of May Day is that was the workers who said, we want an 8-hour workday. And they were willing to go on strike in order to get it. And one of his problems in looking at labor history, and history is remembered, as Howie described it, people remember the Haymarket Massacre, but they don't remember May Day, and they don't remember the demand for a shorter workday. And it is something we need to do today. And it's particularly important when you see companies like Amazon. And I just saw in the paper that they have laid off or lost 150,000 workers since the beginning of 2022. That's every one of those is without a job. And if you had a 4-hour day, they could all be back to work. I think what we're seeing now is an enormous challenge. We saw one challenge with COVID where people reconfigured the workplace. Excuse me. I think this whole question of AI, what is it going to do? How many jobs is it going to replace? And what happens to each of those individuals whose job is replaced by technology? And we have seen it with the development in 1812, starting with the factory system in Lowell, Massachusetts. We've seen it with Henry Ford. We've seen it with Jeff Bezos. We've seen it go on. And it's an enormously complicated world. And for many people, they figure, well, my father worked here, my grandfather worked here, I'm going to work here, I'm going to do it. Those days are gone. And we have to adjust. We have to adjust politically. You know, a guy like Joe Biden is not the solution. He's a guy who's been a supporter, for example, paid for by Bank of America for most of his life. You look at the Congress, it's not happening. You look at the state level, what are the issues? The issues are the ones proactively that the right wing is raising. It's about abortion, it's sexuality, it's library books, for example. Nowhere is the debate in a local area or a state house or about workers' rights and the ability to organize and the necessity of it. And we in the union movement have got to change that discussion. We've got to come out and be more visible. We have to do all kinds of activities and fight for the kind of things and the kind of ways that Natalie has done. And now she's here. Can you hear us, Natalie? I don't know. But it's great to see her. This is a Mother Jones figure here. And we just got to make sure that we can get her in the technology and she can talk. Now she's gone. But I think it's really important. And if anybody has questions or stories about your workplaces, it doesn't do any good to go home and complain. One of the things that I talk about when we do labor history and organizing is that you have door number 1, door number 2, door number 3. And if you're in a bad situation, door number 1 is you don't do anything. You just sit and complain. Door number 2 is you individually get out of it. You move up, and you can see this happens all the time. People in the workplace will either want to be supervisors, as the leader of the Amazon group, Chris Smalls, tried for a number of years, or you go find a different job, or you do kinds of other stuff. But it's me getting away. Door number 3 is you organize with your coworkers to make things better, and that's what people like Natalie have done. And I'm sorry that we're not able to always get her in here, because the stories that she knows about Amazon are extraordinary.
Well, we're working on. There she is again.
We
Can you
see
hear
her.
us, Natalie? Yeah.
Technology is tough, and she's in her car again on her phone, probably.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, she's working with Chris on that. So,
all right. But I think it's a kind of issues that you raised, Howie, when you ran. It's economic, it's social, it's political. And the idea of, well, we're going to go along with kind of what we had. It could be worse. It could be Donald Trump. That's what got us where we are. And we have the highest number of people in the world in a country without health insurance or without paid time off. And it's brutal. And so these companies like Starbucks and Amazon realize that they are the barriers, and are making it very, very difficult to even meet with the union, never mind negotiate a contract. I had teaching a labor history class here, and I had a guest speaker from the graduate students at Johns Hopkins. And there's, as I said, 3,300 of them. They won a labor board election by a large number. But now Hopkins is saying, yeah, well, we'll try and meet with you next month or so. But what happens is practically a third of their membership leaves on the 15th of May or 1st of June, because they're only 10 months. They go away for the summer. And so you have a huge delay. The average time to get a new contract is about a year and a half if you get one. And about 50% of the places that are organized never get a first contract, because each company figures we don't want to give them a chance to establish themselves, because if they do, then they'll organize the next place.
which is an issue in Staten Island. Can you hear us, Natalie? Oh, we lost her again. Because that's one of the issues there. They got the union recognition vote. They won, and Amazon hasn't negotiated a contract.
But you have to make them. You have to do, as I talked about in my pamphlet on first contract, you have to have what's called leverage. And leverage is making the boss do what they don't want to do. And you have to look, and one of the things which is more complicated, certainly Amazon shows it, but other companies even more so. There was just a story yesterday, I think it was in the New York paper, about private equity. That is, I remember I worked in construction. I was in the Carpenters Union, worked for a company for a couple of years where it was a third generation. The grandfather started, and the father, and then the grandson was running it, so he knew who it was. Today, you don't know who the boss is and who makes those decisions. And so you've got to go and research the company, a place like Starbucks and other places. My wife had worked here for the Baltimore Sun. It was a family-owned company. They had a union. They all did fine. It was sold. And the story that was in the paper yesterday talked about, like Bed Bath & Beyond, some of these other companies, the private equity firm will buy them, will borrow money against the company, make money. They will sell the physical properties, create a separate company because they're the ones that make money, and then go forward. But they'll cut pay and do terrible things. And so we're seeing long strikes, like at Warrior Coal down in Alabama, which was not successful, at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, which has not been successful. And I think one of the issues is that most of the people in the union figure, well, we're either going to get a contract or we're going to go on strike. And I would advocate that that's a dangerous duality because often their companies are ready for a strike, can support it. Your members don't always go along with them. And so figuring out leverage, figuring out how can you pressure them through their suppliers, through their distributors, at work, with work slowdowns, work stoppages, all kinds of things, is essential. And again, that's a thing where a professional organizer or a skilled organizer would know how to do it. And so I think affiliating with that is very, very important. I think it's important, and Natalie is a shop steward. Even though you don't have a union, you create the structure within the workplace and start acting like you're representing the members. And one of the things which is crucial, if you've been through a union campaign, that even the anti-union people now realize that the union is going to negotiate a contract, and so that they better get involved. And I've had the experience when doing first contracts where people who were the most anti-union during the campaign become the most pro-union during negotiations and stay that way. Because they realize that their success and their standard of living is going to now depend on the union contract and success in negotiations. So it's a big, big challenge. And it's an enormous world. The unions have slid, Howie, as you talked about, for 40 years or more, from the late 50s. And it was, well, we lost this and the company moved south and we didn't organize it. And, well, I'm okay. And so suddenly we've gone from 35 or 38% of the workforce in the private sector to 5%. We went from no open shop states in 1946 to 26 of them today, more than half the country. Recently, a Supreme Court decision said that even private sector unions can't collect agency fees. An agency fee is the money that a union can collect from a non-member because the non-member is getting the benefit, and you can try and get some financial support for it. So the whole legal structure, we saw it so clearly in the railroad strike or not strike, that here these unions had been 3 or 4 years without a contract. The conditions are brutal as the companies cut. People like Warren Buffett owns the largest railroad, and it's exactly the thing I talked about here about leverage, about finding out who owns and who makes the decisions. Because your paycheck says the railroad, but the guy who makes the decisions is out in Omaha, Nebraska with a bank account. And it's horrible. one of the issues was trying to get paid time off. And the story in the negotiations were that if you felt sick and the company said, we'll make a concession. Yeah, we're going to give you some time off. If you get sick, you can go to the doctor and we'll pay. But we need 3 weeks notice. It's just astonishing to see that kind of level. And again, you'll see in the last week, several states, Colorado, one of them, lowering the age for children to work from 16 to 14. I mean, we are back in 1900. And this whole idea of child labor at a time when there's substantial employment is just brutal. And
So Natalie, can you hear us? She can see us, I guess, but I think she's responding. We can't hear you.
No, I don't think she's plugged in. I don't know what the deal is.
And maybe she's talking to Chris. We're still working on the technicality.
Okay. Well, I think that, again, I would love to hear if there are people watching this program who are involved in organizing. I know one guy, Joey Leach, down in Florida, was going to watch. He is organizing security people. He works as a security person at Disney. What their experiences are in organizing and what their experiences are in not organizing. Because I think one of the issues you've seen is hundreds of Starbucks places are trying to organize, but there are like 9,000 of them. And it's a huge issue. And the company is not going to negotiate, or will say, well, negotiate each shop. And what you got to demand is a national contract, and people get out there and support them. It's just so important.
Try again, Natalie.
That is something that, like organizing FedEx. I know the Teamsters have a problem organizing because they have to go national. Whereas the Teamsters organizing UPS and trucking companies, they went hub by hub, warehouse by warehouse. So, but on the other hand, maybe it would make more sense to, go nationally with Starbucks. It's just,
it's ridiculous to have each place to have its own contract. It's just physically not possible. I mean, one of the things that Jimmy Hoffa, to his credit, which is not many, but he understood the value of a national contract. And so what he did was organize the warehouses, and he had an agreement that if you came into a warehouse and you were not a member of the Teamsters, they wouldn't let you unload your stuff there. And he just basically created that structure nationwide. I mean, one of the issues at FedEx is that technically, legally, the drivers are considered private contractors. And so the whole issue of, we're going to go through the labor board and do all this kind of stuff, not going to work there. And so you have to have a movement that we saw in the 30s with the sit-down strikes and the demonstrations that forced the government and forced the big business people to create a labor law to kind of channel what we did and to control it. But the stories, and again, I think one of the things which is very important, and it's a topic in the schools. The last few years, there's been this whole debate about critical race theory in the schools. Do you teach about the civil rights movement? I think there should be critical class theory, because the labor movement is never taught in schools. It's not a question of, we got to take them out of the textbook now. It's not there. And I think that people need to understand as young people, and they hear it. I mean, it used to be that when the membership was really high and there were working class communities, you as a kid would hear it at your dinner table because your parents would discuss it, and they were in unions and it was done. That's not true anymore. But learning from the history, learning about May Day, learning about this demand, because you talked about how in 1888, the demand was for the 8-hour day. We are still at the 8-hour day. We have not moved an hour in 140 years. And that's just crazy. We've got to set a target on doing better.
Go ahead and try again, Natalie.
No luck
Sorry?
with
Hey, there she is.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Yay.
Yep. Okay, good. All right. Hi, everybody.
Talk
Tell
up
us about what's going on at the Staten Island JFK 8, and what you've been doing and what the issues
Can
are.
you hear me, Glenn?
Yeah.
Okay. What's happening in JFK 8 right now is that, in a nutshell, our ALU leaders have been MIA. They've been traveling for the past year, and as of a couple of days ago, they were in Cuba. We did have the general manager that used to be the assistant general manager in Bessemer, Alabama. He actually got promoted to the GM at JFK 8 back in August of last year. And he immediately started firing organizers and workers. Pretty much cleared out the place. It's pretty much a ghost town right now inside the fulfillment center. And he has now, his name is Ray Roach. He's been promoted to director. So I don't know if he's going to be an executive at the JFK 8 building or if they're going to move him to another location. It's not good. It's not good. We still have a lot of issues with harassment and discrimination. Like I said, most of the workers were already terminated. They have not had the hiring push yet for the beginning of summer, since we're at the end of April now. We still have a lot of issues. We have a lot of heat inside the warehouse. It's really stuffy in there. We don't have any ventilation. Workers are still getting hurt, and we have a horrible work comp system. They tend to deny the claims immediately or try to send people to state disability. So that's a major issue right now. And a lot of the workers are just basically giving up hope because they haven't seen any action taken by Chris Smalls or Derek Palmer as far as getting a contract and starting negotiations. So I don't know how many people out there have been reading the articles about the ALU in the past month. Many organizers have left. Many have been demoted or expelled by Chris. And apparently, well, I just found out recently that Chris and Derek also started a nonprofit, a brand new one, organization with Jordan Flowers and Jerry Bryson. And they're planning on concentrating on other issues right now and other causes, which has many of the workers very upset right now. They made a lot of promises. They haven't come through on anything. But I also know that there's about a dozen of the original organizers from 2021 and 2022 that are still working at JFK 8, and they still do very much want a contract. We absolutely need one. We need higher wages. We need safer working conditions. Amazon has not followed COVID protocol in a year and a half. People are still getting sick. And it's kind of up in the air right now. We did have some good advice coming in from the Teamsters and also from Jane McAlevey last year. And unfortunately, our ALU leaders have pretty much gone rogue. So I'm hoping that the current organizers that are still working in JFK 8 and also LDJ 5 across the street will hopefully push for us to have fair and democratic union elections. We need new board members. We need new worker committee members. We need people that are going to be serious about getting a contract and working on the negotiations. I know that the ALU attorney, Seth Goldstein, is still very active working with the NLRB. And we did have the Workers' Compensation Warehouse Act passed by the governor last December, basically stating that workers could not be fired for going to the bathroom or taking or not meeting the insane production quotas that we're supposed to be making. So that the Warehouse Workers Protection Act last December was a big win for workers in the USA. At the same time, there's no consequences for Amazon not following the law. Like I said, they have been firing a lot of people, and they did use bathroom excuses and water breaks for some of the reasons as to why they were letting people go. So that there really needs to be some serious consequences for Amazon. I know that Jeff Bezos is friends with a lot of the politicians and has them over to his mansions for his monthly parties. But state and federal politicians, senators, congresspeople, people that work in the House, reps, they really need to step up and help us out. Workers are still having a lot of issues, and Amazon has not really faced any consequences. I do know the labor board recently said that they were no longer allowed to fire organizers, but that doesn't really stop Amazon. So we're everything's up in the air right now, and it's really sad that after all that work, the ALU leaders are basically letting everybody down. They really need to, and I'm just going to say it, I know it's a controversial thing to say, but Chris Smalls and Derek Palmer either need to step up and start working on a contract, or they need to resign and step down and allow the 6,000 workers at JFK 8 to have fair elections and get a new board and get a new workers committee so that we can get back on track and hopefully team up with a national organization that has expertise and knowledge that can help us make progress. Whether it's the Teamsters or the AFL-CIO or the Retail Wholesale Department Store Union, we definitely need a national union to help us out. We can no longer rely, unfortunately, on Chris Smalls and Derek Palmer. So that's where we're at right now. We can definitely use the support and advice from some national unions. And that's about it.
So I think, Natalie, why don't you tell us what a work day is like for you?
The work day is, I personally work a 4-day week and 10-hour shifts each day. I get into work at 7:15 and immediately go to the back of the warehouse. It's a big warehouse. It's the size of 16 football fields. I work at the back of the warehouse in the department called the ship dock. It's the outbound part of the warehouse where we basically get the packages to the loading trucks. And I am currently sorting as well as palletizing. So when I'm sorting, I'm basically scanning packages, a lot of packages. I have a bin to my right and a conveyor belt to my left. And scanning the packages
electronically?
where they are. I'm sorry?
You have an electronic scanner? I'm just fascinated to know what the work process is like and if there's opportunities for people to talk to each other while you're working. It sounds like it's so frantic in there that you don't have that kind of a possibility.
Yeah. Well, when you come in, you have to go through security. There's no ventilation, so it gets really, really hot in there with all the machines buzzing around you. But you come in and you check in with your supervisors, and they will send you on the ship dock anyway. They will send you to either sorting or palletizing. Some people are water spiders where they wrap the pallets full of packages. Other people are problem solve department where they actually take the packages that are broken or half open, and they'll go ahead and redo everything in the system. We try to get the packages out within 24 hours. And after everything, by the time everything gets to us, it's already been packed and labeled in other departments. So our job is basically just to scan it and get it on the trucks. And we have 2 half-hour breaks during the day. It takes between 5 and 10 minutes to walk to the break rooms because the warehouse is so large. So by the time you go to the bathroom and actually grab something to eat or drink from the machines, you probably only have about 10 or 15 minutes to actually sit down. It's tough. It's tough on your feet. It's tough on your back. Most people, unfortunately, don't last longer than 90 days. They'll either quit or get terminated because the work is so physically and mentally demanding. Trying to hit the rates is kind of crazy. I've had multiple managers tell me that the way they get the rate is to take the average number of what a person can process, and then they'll triple it, and that's the number they expect everybody to hit. So only a few people can do that. So the turnover is extremely high. The turnover is about 150%. So people come in and people go out, and very few of us are long-term. I've been there about between the Jersey offices and 4 years in Staten Island. Collectively, I've been with Amazon for about 6 years. And it's made me tough. It's made me really tough. You have to be extremely strong-minded, strong-bodied in order to get through that job.
Well, I've always admired your guts. I think it's terrific.
Thank you.
And
thank you. It's tough, but I mean, everybody has bills to pay. You do what you have to do to get by. And luckily, most of the seniors that are still there, that I actually trained a lot of the new hires. You have to have a good sense of humor to get through the day. And a lot of the seniors will take it upon themselves to be a little extra supportive of everybody else to try to get them through the day. I'm not going to lie, a lot of people are taking aspirin and Advil and stronger drugs to get through the day. People are working, I mean, it's a repetitive motion job regardless of what department you're working in. So everybody has a lot of strains and sprains. It's not uncommon for people to get injured every single day. We have people that are breaking bones because, boxes have fallen on them, carts have fallen on them. Some people get run over by the 200-pound pallet or dollies that people are dragging around. Like I said, everybody's working as fast as they can to meet that production rate. So, unfortunately, a lot of people get hurt. You really have to be careful. You really have to be aware of your surroundings. And I've had many people jump in and actually save me from getting hit by different things that are buzzing around me, either on the conveyor belt or machinery over my head or different devices that we have to use. And some of these boxes are heavy. I mean, like I said, it's by the time everybody leaves at the end of the day, everybody is worn out, totally exhausted. By the second day, people are trying to stay awake while they work. By the third day, people are in so much pain, they're having trouble walking. By the fourth day of the week, a lot of people will take a half day. They'll start using their bank account time, which is filled with a limited amount of PTO, paid time off, or unpaid time, UPT, or their vacation time. We do not get 6 hours of sick time. We only get 1 or 2 days each quarter, and we have to earn them hourly. And that gets really difficult during the winter time when we have severe weather here in New York and we're having floods and snowstorms, and sometimes the bridges are closed. Sometimes both the governors in Jersey and New York will call state of emergencies. So considering the fact that most of the staff comes in from different boroughs, Queens, the Bronx, Brooklyn, a lot of people cross the bridge from New Jersey. Amazon ran through most of their staff already in Staten Island. So it's, I mean, I got it really lucky. I feel bad for the people that are coming in from the other boroughs because they can take 3 or 4 buses one way to get to and from work. And a lot of those people are commuting for up to 3 hours at a time and then working 10 or 12-hour shifts and then getting back on those buses for another 3 or 4 hour trip back home. So when I say that these people that last at Amazon are really, really tough, that's no joke. That these people in New York and Jersey are really, really tough. They have to be in order to continue being employees there.
When you say you're lucky, you're living out of your car, right? So you don't have the long commute. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
I am with many other people. There's about 100 of us that stay in the covered lot and also in the open lots around the JFK 8 building inside of our cars. I know dozens of workers that actually live in shelters in different boroughs in New York. Unfortunately, you have to landlords expect you to make 3 times the rent money anywhere, in any state in the U.S. So because the prices are so high in Jersey and New York, entire families are cramming into like 1-bedroom apartments. I know a lot of people that are cramming a lot of their family and friends and relatives into really tiny places. And unfortunately, I mean, I found out that FedEx is actually, their starting pay is like $23 an hour for brand new hires. And I've been with Amazon for 6 years, and I'm making $20 an hour. So it doesn't quite seem right. It doesn't seem competitive with what the rest of the industry is paying their employees. I think UPS might make a little bit more money than we do as well. We did not get holiday bonuses or summer bonuses for peak season this year, last year, and the year before. I think mostly because Amazon was upset that we had a unionization attempt. So I think they were basically taking revenge, that they were really upset when the union election happened, and in 2022, in April, a year ago. And we only had 53% of the employees in the building vote, which is really sad. But of the 53%, a little more than half of that voted yes for the union. So overall, only about a third of the employees, out of like 6,000 employees, voted for a union. And at the time, it was pretty exciting. We were all hoping that a contract would be negotiated and that things would start changing for the better. But there's been no progress in the past year. I'm sure Amazon is very happy about that. But in all fairness to the ALU, Amazon is also going to keep this tied up in the courts for God knows how many years. They have no intention of cooperating in any way. They want total control, and their greed is getting the best of them. And they've actually started switching to robotics at some of their newer locations. I know we had some people from JFK 8 that went ahead and tried to help open the Delaware factory last year, and they came back saying that many of the departments were actually robotic now. So I also know that Amazon has spent billions of dollars buying, I think, 5 different corporations in the past handful of years, and right now they're in negotiations by the AMC theaters, that chain. So I don't think they're going to phase out their warehouses because they've actually Amazon started their own school, and they're trying to brainwash high schoolers into getting jobs with Amazon. So I think they're going to keep the factories, but I think they're branching out with other corporations and different types of industries. It's really, really sad. They're obsessed with their customers. They put their customers first, but unfortunately, a lot of the workers get left behind, if thought of at all. So I tell the young workers especially, try to have a plan B. If you're going to go back to college or vocational school or something, try to have a plan B. Because we're doing everything we can inside JFK 8 to make it as comfortable, as palatable as possible. I work with people every day trying to help them out with harassment issues, discrimination issues. If they get called into HR, I'll go in and help them out. If they have managers that are harassing them, which many of them do, I've been there long enough to know a lot of the managers, so I can get involved and try to help get some of the managers to back off. We do have what we call a VOA board, a bulletin board. It's called the Voices of Amazon board, where people can put their concerns and questions on. And everybody who clocks in or out of the building can see these comments, but our recent director, who used to be the GM last year and the beginning of this year, Ray Roach, actually took down that board. He has it covered now with different pictures and cartoon characters and stuff. He doesn't want people to see the comments. He's basically taking away our free speech to have a voice at the warehouse, which is really unfortunate. But it doesn't stop me. I still put up the comments because I know that the workers can still access everything on their phones, especially at break time. And that way, if anybody has any questions or concerns, they can write about it on the VOA board. And they all know I work on the ship dock. So if they have any issues, they can come to me. A lot of them are afraid to speak up because there's very much a climate of fear and intimidation there. Managers and the supervisors are constantly threatening to fire everybody on a daily basis for menial things. Like I said, going to the bathroom or getting a drink of water, or for some of the single moms, if they need to check their phone because they want to keep in contact with their kids. All those kind of things can drop your production rate if you're gone from your station for even 1 minute. So numbers are everything at Amazon. I get it. They want to be successful. They want to stay in business. They want high production. But the lengths that they go to literally overwork everybody and burn everybody out to get those numbers is pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. So, like I said, me and a few of the other senior people do what we can, lighten the load a bit, and to try to comfort some of the new hires, especially who are completely freaked out when they first start. Nobody expects it to be as hard as it is. I tell people it's like going to the gym and doing cardio and weightlifting as fast as you can and as hard as you can for 10 to 12 hours straight. Not being allowed to sit down unless you're at break, the breaks are very short. And
It sounds a lot like UPS where I worked, except we had a contract. So we had work rules, limits. We had a grievance process. You get fired, usually got rehired because management was always, most of their reasons were bogus. So, I admire the effort you guys did to get the vote, and now you got a long slog to get a contract. But why don't we take a few questions that people have posted in the chat, and
Great.
because we're coming up on an hour. Here's one. Scout Trooper 164. Amazon should treat their drivers better. These guys shouldn't be shitting in boxes and pissing in bottles while they're in the job. That's a comment.
Amen.
Yeah. Yeah, the drivers in Palmdale, Amazon drivers in Palmdale, California, who work for a subcontractor like the FedEx guys do, voted to have a union affiliated with the Teamsters. Now they got to fight for a contract. So hopefully
Right.
there'll be more of that.
Well, one of the groups out there did get a contract. They got some raises, but Amazon had cut them off as a subcontractor. So this was just in the last 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, Amazon is the worst. FedEx is worse than UPS.
Well, Amazon is like a country of its own. And what Natalie was talking about here is how they're spreading into other areas like education. It's astonishingly ambitious, but it's very, very dangerous. I mean, it's a country within a country. And I just wish I would just ask Natalie one thing. Have you ever tried to organize a slowdown in there to say to people, look, we're not going to put this crazy pace. We're going to do what we can do and change. And that's a workplace control issue that every workplace for 200 years has had to deal with. Has there been any slowdown organizing going? I don't know. Maybe she can't hear me now. Oh, okay.
Well, like I said, we have about a dozen of the organizers that collectively we got to the union vote. I know that many of them are serious about doing the contract and they want negotiations. They want to help the workers. They're very passionate about workers' rights. But that's only in JFK 8. I know that they're actually making a second attempt to unionize LDJ 5 across the way, which I believe is a sortation building. But that's going to be very difficult because those workers are only part-time. They're not as invested as the full-time worker. And I know that we actually have 4 buildings in one complex. The building to the right of JFK 8 is DYY 6. That is where most of the van drivers check in and out of. I believe the drivers are contracted by a third party, as well as the semi-truck drivers in another building. Like I said, my hope is that the organizers that are serious about contract negotiations will publicly push for fair and democratic elections. We need new board members. We need new worker committee members. If Chris Smalls and Derek Palmer want to continue traveling and be professional party boys for the rest of their life, living off donations, great, fine. They can do whatever they want. But if they obviously are not going to take contract negotiations seriously and have enough respect for the workers at JFK 8 to do the right thing and start working on a contract, then they need to give somebody else a try.
Okay.
So we need elections, and we need the help of a national union to come in. And I know the Teamsters have been very supportive. AFL-CIO has been very supportive. Retail, wholesale, department store union has been very supportive. They were all actually sending reps when we were still campaigning for the union a couple of years ago. So, and they're still with us now. They're still being as supportive as they can. So we can't do it on our own as a small independent union. You cannot go up against the second biggest employer in the country behind Walmart and expect to be able to negotiate with billionaires when you have a small independent union with young organizers that don't have experience doing this. We need national help, and we need it now. I know that Amazonians in California have had a little bit more success with their organizing and working with local politicians. And in fact, I actually heard a really great story a few weeks back about how workers that were crossing the border from Mexico into San Diego have spent months working on trying to get a shuttle because they were walking God knows how many miles across the border to go work in San Diego, and Amazon kept refusing to get them a shuttle bus. And they banded together, they worked together, and I don't know how many months it took them to get this, but they actually started getting their shuttles just recently. And that basically proved that when workers stick together and stand up for each other, they can actually get action done. They can make things happen.
Great.
But you have to work together. You have to support each other. You can't be off traveling. You can't be partying. You can't be separating yourself from the organizers or power tripping and demoting and expelling people.
Okay.
All that fracture is exactly what Amazon wants.
Are you able to share that?
You have to support each other.
Are you able to share that success of the San Diego people with your coworkers?
I'm sorry, I could barely hear that question.
Are you able to share that story that you just told us about the San Diego workers organizing with your coworkers at Staten Island?
Yeah, I was actually sharing that on social media and sharing it during break time, which is when we all start talking about the situation that's going on with the ALU, because many workers do ask about it.
Yep. Because hearing success is always a great incentive.
Yeah.
You're breaking up. I can barely hear you.
Hearing somebody being successful at organizing is a good positive reinforcement to what you're trying to do.
I mean, we need new leaders.
Okay.
Period. I mean, I'm not gonna.
No, I got you.
When there's something wrong, I'll call them out on it, including Jeff Bezos, Andy Jassy, the former VP Dave Clark, who thank God is no longer with Amazon. But it's a stand with the ALU. If Chris Smalls and Derek Palmer are not going to work on a contract, they need to step down. We have a lot of passionate organizers inside JFK 8 that are willing to do the job. They're willing to do the hard work. They're willing to actually work with the workers and work with management and HR to make the situation better. So if Chris and Derek don't want to do it anymore, step aside.
Okay.
Step aside, because we have too many issues and too many problems there that need to be resolved, and somebody needs to tackle it head on. I mean, the reason why I volunteered years ago to start doing the unofficial shop store stuff at JFK 8 and even the warehouses in New Jersey is because I have a work comp background. That was my former career in California before the recession. And every single one of these organizers has different talents, different skills, different techniques that they know, that whether it's computer skills, whether it's talking publicly, whether it's being well connected to other activism groups in NYC. We have so many people that can really take action and get the job done. But when Chris keeps changing the Constitution because he's being self-serving, and he keeps putting things in the Constitution for the ALU that say that we're not going to have fair elections until after a contract is negotiated, and he keeps upping that date, it's basically to buy him more time to goof off. And I mean, like, if you want to travel and go around everywhere and work on other causes, like right now he was in Cuba. Why? I don't know. Just why hasn't been at JFK working on the contract. It really makes me wonder if he was ever really serious about helping workers in the first place, or if this was just about fame and fortune for him. Okay. But I have faith in the other dozen organizers that are serious about this. Connor Spence and Brett Daniels and Madeline Leslie and Dustin Medina, Karen Ponce and Tristan Dutchin, John Michelle. We had an amazing organizer named Matt Cusick who was doing newsletters for us and coming up with some brilliant ways of dealing with the union busters and all the propaganda inside JFK 8. We have good people, and we have some really good senior workers that would love to have a caucus at JFK 8 and have a band of people that are willing to address these issues and work with management and HR at Amazon to make things better. So we have the people. We just need to have Chris and Derek either step up or step aside so that we can have some fair democratic elections. And another thing I want to point out is that you cannot have a union without transparency and integrity. If you're not going to keep the accounting, if you're not going to keep the receipts, if you're not going to prove to the donors exactly what you're spending the money on, and it's not going towards the union, then there's going to be trouble. Then nobody wants to wind up in jail. Nobody wants to get investigated by the feds. I mean, the national unions know this. The national unions would really be helpful in many areas, including that particular area of no transparency.
Okay.
But that was the problem with the TCOEW 3 years ago. It's been a problem with the ALU the last couple of years. And without democracy, without integrity, without accountability, you cannot have an effective union. I know a lot of people are not going to be happy that I'm talking about this stuff, but you know what? The truth matters, and people have to be accountable the same way that we step up and hold Amazon accountable on social media, on the VOA board. We also have to hold our unions accountable. The ALU has to be accountable. If Chris and Derek are not going to do it, step aside. There's plenty of people that want to step up and help these workers.
Okay.
Here we got a question, Chris Blankenhorn. With 150% turnover, it has to be nearly impossible to keep the rank and file connected and engaged. By the time you activate some, they leave. And yeah, you've talked about that. And, you know, I think along with union democracy, keeping and engaging in the first place people that see this job as temporary. They don't expect to stay a long time. I mean, we even had that at UPS because we had high turnover because it's physically demanding and the supervisors are, you know, cracking the whip all the time to speed things up. And most people say, I can't deal with this. The thing we had that you don't is we had a good retirement plan and great health care. That's why most people worked at the hub here in Syracuse. But anyway, I think you've really conveyed to people, you know, what it's like in some of these jobs if they haven't been through it. And we need political support for this organizing. We need to, you know, let people that aren't in this situation know what's going on. And as Bill was talking about before you came on, we got to change our unions because even those that got they're service unions, you know. A lot of people in my union thought the Teamsters were like an insurance company. You pay your dues, you get some benefits. You know, you pay your insurance premium, and if something happens, you know, they'll help you out. So they're not really engaging the membership. And one thing I've observed is that the leaders don't want the membership engaged because they might get overthrown in the next election. So they'd rather have us ignorant. That's another issue we got to have to deal with in our unions. And, you know, I think you're pointing to the problem. You know, we need people in leadership who are not in there because they want, you know, a cushy job to get off the shop floor and, you know, just sit there for the rest of their lives. They got to be people committed to the cause. Otherwise, they're less than worthless. They're a problem.
But you also have to have membership who say, I'm going to take the time and make the effort to participate. Because too many people figure I'm just going to go to work, go home, and forget it. And that has been a failure. So it's each of us has to step up.
which brings up, the labor movement as a movement that's a culture, a place people want to hang out.
That's right.
Otherwise, people say, I'll just get through the day and then go home and,
Yep.
entertain myself. But if it becomes
Yep.
a place where you have friends and, culture, Natalie's a comedian, that's something that can be contributed, music. I mean, that was stuff the labor movement had,
Yep.
and it's largely lost.
Yep.
Yeah, what's interesting is that half of our staff that's still there is that they're older like me, and they lost their careers as teachers, architects, engineers during the recession about the same time I did, and they all very much want a national union to step in. The younger workers, though, many of the new hires are caught up in the hype of Chris Smalls, and occasionally when Chris has a happy hour for everybody where he has an open bar advertised at a local place, and inviting people to have drinks, every 4 or 5 months because you're just checking in with people, that's not enough. We need action.
Yeah.
And we need help. We need support. And as far as the politicians go, nobody was supporting us during the campaign. Nobody. I know that we had reached out to, I'm not going to name anybody specifically, but there were a few high-profile politicians that we kept asking for support to come by at our rallies, and they never showed up. But
Until you won the election, then they showed up.
They all wanted to show up out of nowhere. But what have they done? Well, what legislation have they passed since then to help the workers? Where are they now? What are they doing? What laws are they enacting to go after billionaire CEOs for Google and Apple and Microsoft, as well as Amazon and Starbucks? What are they physically doing through the legislature to make people's lives better? We've had deregulation for the past 40 years, and now CEOs are in charge of everything. They basically control our entire economy. That's insanity.
Well, they got the PRO Act as a talking point, but when the Democrats had a majority in both houses, they didn't get it passed because they wouldn't take on the filibuster. So they still got it as a talking point when they're talking to certain audiences, but they really didn't want to pass it because if they did, they'd have taken on a filibuster.
Yep.
Same goes with a lot of other progressive legislation that
single payer.
they didn't get that far on single payer, but there was other legislation about voting rights and election protection and abortion rights that the House passed. And then when it got to the Senate, they just said, okay, filibuster, Republicans got a veto, and they didn't fight it. It's
take it out in the streets. Do what the people in France are doing. We got to do that over those issues. It's good to blame other people, but we got to do it, each of us.
And what's interesting too is that the day that President Biden had Chris Smalls over to shake his hand at the White House, it was a big photo opportunity for the Democrats. And that same day, behind the scenes, Biden was re-awarding Amazon like a $10 billion contract.
Yep.
That he said just a week before that he wouldn't do to any corporations that were union busting. So it's hard to have a lot of faith in politicians. Right now, I think Jessica Ramos from Queens, Senator Ramos, is one of the few people that actually stepped up and helped with the Workers' Warehouse Protection Act, there was a similar act a year prior to that in California that was passed to help workers out with not being terminated for taking bathroom breaks and water breaks and not being able to meet their quotas. But on the East Coast, Senator Ramos is one of the few people that stepped up and actually took action. So I think it's not just about workers putting pressure on their employers to step up and do the right thing. It's also about the customers and the shareholders keeping Amazon accountable, keeping
Absolutely.
any billionaire CEOs
Yep.
accountable,
Yep.
and doing better by the workers.
Yep. Are there other questions, Howie?
Yeah, Chris will put them on the,
Okay.
put them up. If not, oh, here we go. Vicky Corden, I thought monopolies were outlawed. Amazon, Walmart, and the like are illegal monopolies. Well, what are your thoughts? Antitrust, certainly.
Never enforced. Never enforced. The political structure just forgets it. That's how we get these companies to have this enormous power. And again, it goes back. If you had Howie Hawkins as president of the United States instead of Joe Biden, it would be a different look. You know, they paid for their political contributions are from these monopolies, and they're getting more. And the private equity capital that you can't even see as names has even more power.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't too surprised to see a few politicians show up after the union victory, but I'm still pushing on social media for those same politicians to put their money where their mouth is and do something. Write some laws, pass some laws, help the workers. I mean, we have pregnant women whose light duty accommodations are not being accommodated, and we've had a few people have miscarriages at JFK 8. When we have severe weather conditions every summer and every winter, if people can't make it in for whatever reason because bridges are closed down or whatever, it's 110 degree weather, 115 degree weather, which makes it even way hotter inside the warehouse because there's no ventilation in there. We have people passing out all the time. People collapse all the time from heat stroke, from epileptic seizures, from heart attacks. Where are the laws protecting the workers? I mean, I don't care if they're friends with Jeff Bezos or not, if anybody actually could be friends with billionaires like that. But there are certain things that they can do, laws that they can push for, and they can actually work with the organizers at JFK 8 that have their own ideas about specific issues that we deal with every day. No one has reached out to the organizers to have any of those meetings. It's all been get your picture taken with Chris, get your picture taken with Eric, and then forget about it. We need the
and in the laws we do have don't get enforced. You know, like you mentioned the law on warehouse protection for warehouse workers that Jessica Ramos got through the state legislature. That's only the first step. Then you got to get it enforced. And the state, you know, is lacking on a lot of those things. We have wage theft over $1 billion a year in New York State. We got horrible working conditions on the farms, and we just passed legislation to address that, but it's not being implemented on all the farms. So, you know, that's the other. I'm just saying, you got to get the law, and then you got to make sure it's enforced, and that's difficult.
Yep.
Given who pays for the politicians' campaigns.
Yep.
Yeah, and you know, I think that has a lot to do with the customers and the shareholders, because if Amazon is going to give almost all of their attention to keeping the customers happy and keeping the shareholders happy, then we need the customers and the shareholders to step up and contact Amazon.
Yep.
Repeatedly, I've put out their phone numbers, their emails for everybody at the corporate office. And I've specifically asked customers and shareholders to please step up and support the workers by asking Amazon to do the right thing. And I occasionally get notes from customers saying, what can I do? Or I want to help some way. Or they think that donating to the ALU is going to somehow excuse the fact that nothing else is being done for the workers. I mean, I want to say, first of all, thank you to all the donors, domestically and internationally, that did contribute to the ALU. We were able to get T-shirts and have barbecues. to connect with the workers. Chris and Derek did get some travel time to go to Washington, D.C. a few times. They went to some rallies in Pennsylvania with that money. But honestly, until the customers say enough is enough, until the shareholders say enough is enough, we're going to hold you accountable, then Amazon CEOs are going to continue to do whatever they want to do, which is keep raking in the money, keep making profits, and keep considering the workers to be collateral damage. And luckily, I'm very thankful for the fact that we had the New York Times step up in many ways and support us with some incredible investigative stories. They did an investigative story in June of 2021 that was phenomenal. It literally was a year-long investigation into over 200 workers, current and former, Amazon employees at every level. And they exposed a lot. They really exposed a lot of the issues going on at Amazon. And unfortunately, one of them was that executives were allegedly in their emails saying that workers were collateral damage, period. That basically told me that we were expendable. Didn't matter if we died of COVID, didn't matter if we died of injuries. They were just going to squeeze as much labor out of us as they could and have absolutely no regard for us as human beings, even though they bend over backwards to always make sure that their customers are thrilled with the service. That blows my mind. That really blows my mind. But Apple CEOs, the Microsoft, the Google, all those guys, it's time to rein them in. It's time to rein them in, and it's time for the politicians to literally step up and start holding them accountable. If these people are going to let their workers get injured and die on the job, then they don't need just fines. They need jail time. They need serious consequences. And serious people need to step up and start making change and start shouting for them to make change.
And I would say in the political realm, and I've tried to do this in the Green Party, we got to start talking about workers' ownership, community ownership with workers' control of the work process, so that profit is not the only thing that the people running the businesses are concerned about. Some of these businesses should be public utilities. They operate at cost, so they can deliver their service at the lowest cost and pay the workers a decent wage. We were talking about the railroads. They were the most profitable business last year. And instead
nationalize
nationalize them with workers' control. They, instead of putting all the money they made into improving the infrastructure so there were less derailments and paying the workers more and giving them better benefits, they spent the biggest portion of those profits on stock buybacks, which just gooses up their own stocks. And that is, it's not even good economics. It's not good for production. It's just good for rich people getting richer. So we need a new system, and that's really off the agenda for the two major parties. But it's something we've got to put on there, as well as, I think, giving much more visibility to what Natalie's been talking about. Can you imagine Joe Biden talking about what's really going on in an Amazon warehouse, let alone whoever the Republican is? But there are a lot of people out there that are going through it, in their own jobs. And, we should have a political movement, a party that speaks to those concerns, because a lot of people would listen.
Yeah, I kind of feel like aside from the workers and the activists and the press, what we really need help from is the politicians, the customers, and the shareholders. And I know that if it wasn't for Jordan Sheridan of Status Quo constantly doing videos and getting our stories out there online, and if it wasn't for Lauren Gurley of Vice talking to us every day and putting her stories out there online, she's now ironically working for the Washington Post now, but she's still covering the ALU stories. And I mean, thank God for them. I mean, if it wasn't for them doing stories on us all the time and us having a platform and being able to share those stories on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, on TikTok, everything. I mean, we're doing as much as we can, but it's going to take Amazon actually following their 16 principles that they always brag about, being the world's best employer, the top-rated employer for LinkedIn, which is a complete joke. Because the top 5 that LinkedIn recently put on their top 5 list also included Bank of America and Chase and Wells Fargo, companies that are known for being totally corrupt and always having layoffs and not treating their workers right. And a lot of their shareholders for those same top 5 companies are, I mean, when you have BlackRock as a main shareholder for all 5 of those companies, that's not good. That's not good. BlackRock doesn't have a good reputation for any reason whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And I call people out all the time. I literally responded to Andy Jassy's tweet about it, and he talked about how proud he was of it. And I said, really? You're proud of this? I mean, artificial intelligence makes up a majority of those LinkedIn accounts. They're fake accounts. And yet you're going to go online and try to convince everybody that you're the best employer in the country, even though you've had all these issues with union busting and you've had so many locations trying to unionize. It just, I can only do so much calling out the BS, but we need help. We need a lot more help from a lot more people.
Okay.
Well, we're going on 90 minutes. We don't want to make it too long or people won't listen. So I want to thank both Bill and Natalie for coming on. I think Natalie gave us a
One of a kind, Natalie, as always.
Yeah, I mean, the workplace came alive, as bad as it is, from your description. And Bill, brings a long experience and wealth of knowledge and perspective. But before we sign off, would either of you like to, say a few last words to people?
All I'll say is, hey, Natalie, I'll take you out for dinner.
Oh, thank you. I would love that. Thank you, Bill. What I'd like to say is that Bill, thank you to Bill for always being incredibly supportive. For the past year, he has been beyond supportive almost every day. We've had conversations, and I've taken one of his labor history courses, which was incredible. He's an amazing teacher. And in fact, I'll be taking the how to get a contract, how to use leverage to get your contract class that Bill is giving next week on May 4th, I believe it is, Bill. And I take a lot of classes through Labor Notes in Cornell University, so thanks to those organizations. And WAR, if anybody from the activist group WAR is listening, unbelievable how supportive they've been of the ALU and all the workers in the last couple of years. They really helped us out a lot. And again, to all the donors that stepped up to help us out, I want to do better by the workers and make sure those donations are used properly and that there's more transparency in the ALU. But we definitely need fair democratic elections to get the ball rolling again and to get this back on track. So, and if there's any politicians out there listening, my door's always open. The organizers are always ready, willing, and able to have those meetings to make some progress and get some laws passed.
Well, I've been calling a politician, and I got your phone number now, so I'm going to stay in touch. And
Thank you so much.
Once again, I really appreciate both of you coming on. And, we'll be here next Saturday. And next week, we'll just do, I'll say something about the current events, and then we'll have comments and questions. I do have some people I'm hoping to get on from Ukraine and Puerto Rico, and actually a journalist that just got back from Ukraine. So those topics are coming up. And, of course, we got a whole lot going on in this country that we need to talk about. So Once again, thank you, and everybody have a good week.
Same to you.
Thank you, Howie.